This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
The thing is that's going to be hard on Tuesdays. Preston, so I think they're unbeaten at home. They haven't conceded many at home either. Like I said before, if you can harness some of what we saw yesterday in the attacking areas, there's no reason why we can't be the buck to the trend.
I think the perfect storm for Davis is he gets his, puts the band back together, for the want of a better phrase, and he just stinks out a 1-0 win. This computer. Right, okay. We are on. Here we go. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blues Focus podcast with me, your host, John Graham. And today, my companion is David Brent.
Hey, I've been called much worse.
Mate, this is commitment to the cause that you're taking time out to do this. Look, the reason I was keen to do this is because, we obviously spent a lot of time talking sort of last week about, the aftermath of a pretty poor performance. Well, okay performance, but poor results, probably a better reflection. And obviously knowing that going to Preston away is never easy, and a little bit of trepidation around team selection and how he's going to approach it, because, there were going to be two completely different games, really, Hull and Preston, just the way they panned out. And I think that was the case. And we sort of alluded to the fact that I'll get this in now for all our Korean listeners. So I do apologise for getting Pake's name wrong. I'm calling Pike. That's probably just me being Dad's Army. I don't know. But I felt that, that was always going to be a conundrum as far as the selection was concerned. So bit of a weird one. So I'll let you go through what happened at the start, but even before the game and the decisions taken after that incident, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because I don't remember the last time prior to this season where somebody got injured in the warm-up, and it's happened to us twice in maybe 4 or 5 games. So I was a little bit confused initially because I sort of started watching the game 0.0001 seconds, so I didn't sort of understand initially. I thought, hang on, I'm sure the lineups had Iwata at right back and whatever else. So I initially joined in and I thought, I'm watching the wrong game here. But yeah, as soon as I spotted how it was all laid out, I realised from social media that Roberts had got himself injured in the warm-up. So as I say, twice in the last few games is a bit strange. That's something to look into, I think. And then I was quite pleased when I looked at the lineup initially, because it was kind of, we were wrong essentially, that we thought he was going to default back to type and put the 2 back in midfield, and then it just that injury just then threw things out the window a little bit. When you look at the bench and you think, well, I don't really know in that instance what else he possibly could have done. Maybe a Kyogo or a striker up there to drop Stansfield into the 10, but that wouldn't have been what I would have wanted to see, because I like Stansfield as the 9. So yeah, I sort of, once I had time to digest it, I sort of thought, well, actually, yeah, I can see why they've done what they've done. The only thing that then baffled me slightly, baffled's a strong word, a little bit puzzled, was when I watched the game unfold. We looked a lot more like a 3 in midfield rather than a number 10. But then when we were going forward, Doyle was the one sitting and he was the one playing really deep out of the 3. Yeah. And I started thinking then, well, from what I've seen of him, and it has been limited, but his record has sort of spoken for itself, and the clubs that he's played at and where he's managed to get his career so far, I've seen him as somebody who's stronger in the attacking areas than the defensive areas. So if you're then going to go to a 3 and you're going to have somebody sitting, is Iwata not the perfect player to do that job? Rather than him being one of the 2 that joins in with the attack when we are going forward. And so that was the only thing that threw me a little bit. I was pleased to see Neumann in the team. That was something that we've been crying out for, especially after last time. So yeah, I was pleased. I couldn't see any other scenario. I will also admit that, but I was pleased at least to see that he was in there. I enjoyed seeing the little snippets at the end of the game where they were being forced to have photos with Clara and Neumann as well, just to sort of dampen all these rumours. But yeah, as I say, I wasn't expecting wholesale changes. I had concerns over people like Leonard and Anderson as to whether they would be able to start 2 games in a row after not playing much football. But obviously Anderson proved that he was perfectly capable of doing sort of another hour. And Leonard came on and did another good job, I think. So yeah, I wasn't overly surprised in the end once I'd realised what was going on.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened with Roberts. I think he's another one that's been plagued with injuries, hasn't he? You know, for many seasons, and yeah, it's disappointing that after. Yeah, I mean that was a good performance in the previous game. That he finds himself getting injured. You'd like to think it's probably just maybe a bit of a tightening of a calf or a hamstring or whatever, and it's just precautionary and nothing that's going to keep him out long term. Because he has looked well for me. I like Kumas probably as more of an impact player because he gives you energy. I don't think his final ball is anywhere near as good as Roberts. So I think when you're trying to put put a bit of make a statement in a game early on, I think Roberts is probably more likely to do that from a creative perspective. Maybe Kumas, if you're just trying to get on the front foot and get the press going, there's an argument for that. But yeah, disappointed to see Roberts, not be able to take part. And then I think it was an easy decision, I think, for Davis because he would have been. Well, I'm assuming he would have been toying with. Do I go with the Water again at right back, knowing that you've got Samuel, who is on the bench, so therefore should be fit? If you're fit enough to be a sub, then in my mind you're fit enough to start. So I think that it probably just allowed him to go. When we talked last time about the comfort blanket and going back to what he knows, I don't think he would have been overly concerned that happened. Of course, he'd want Roberts in the team because he picked him. But I think the fact that he's gone to a plan B, it's a well-known plan B, isn't it? It's his default sort of selection, I suppose. And I mean, going to your point, I actually think it looked like a 4-5-1 in the first 10 minutes. And this is where I think that a lot of the criticism of Davis that he's had over the last few weeks, I've always said with this gaffer, you need to give him time because he's learning on the job. And I've said, and I probably won't say it again, it's boring. But my worry was that he was just a bit of he's got one way of playing. That's the way he's going to play come hell or high water. And it was different, noticeably different, probably forced into it a bit, but nevertheless, regardless of that late change, they were always going to be pragmatic. They were always going to, I think, sort of try and stop Preston from, I think, getting a foothold in the game as far as using their physical presence. We needed to be in their faces. We needed to close them down. And having that 3 in the middle certainly did that. But, your wide men, Anderson and Kumas, they were sitting in as well. So it was a very non-Davis type of, I think, the way we approached the game, but it was what was needed. And that's probably one of the things that I enjoyed most about the game was actually seeing the manager look at the opposition and not necessarily tailor the way we play to the opposition, but you've got to be mindful of them. They are huge. They're a massive team. And it was, you've only got to see after the first 15 minutes, the die was cast the way they were going to play. They were going to get it wide. They were going to lump balls into the box. And I don't mind that. If that's the way that you're best equipped to influence a game, then that's what you do. I mean, we saw enough of it with Rowett and probably to Eustace to a lesser degree. And I think this snobbery in football is just a bit, I don't agree with it. Winning football games is the key ingredient. And, we did that. But the reality is, in games like that, you've got to earn the right to play. And I think we 100% did that. And it was probably one of the most enjoyable performances that I've seen for a long, long time because it was very un-Blues.
Yeah.
I certainly under Davis, and then if you go past Davis, then that's a complete car crash. We probably don't want to talk about. But so, what were your thoughts on just that first half and the way it sort of played out?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the full 90 minutes was was quite similar. I didn't see any stark changes in the second half. So my perspective was it was refreshing in a strange way to see. Basically, when we did the podcast 2 weeks ago, we were sort of crying out for, or I certainly was crying out for him to show this ability to change and to adapt and to have a plan B and to sometimes be a bit more brave. But what comes with that is also bravery doesn't have to be just constantly attacking a team. Bravery can sometimes be, we know we're, potentially going to be weaker than this team. It's a team in form. It's a team unbeaten at home. We can be brave in being resolute, and we can try and be strong at the back. And don't get me wrong, I think on another day against another opposition, we might have conceded because they did have a sort of 3 or 4 what I would say really, really good chances to score.
Yeah.
And they've just hit it straight at Beadle. But apart from those few instances, which they were bound to get, by the way, because they were putting the ball into the box so many times, something was bound to happen at some point. They weren't going to go the whole game and not test us, but they did. But we came through it, and that was the important bit. And I think we talked about it again on that same podcast about sometimes just having good defenders allows you to defend and worry about the attacking side of it. And how great was it to finally see us actually score from a set piece, albeit it was more of a volleyball tactic than football.
It was a fantastic.
It
was a great shoulder, wasn't it?
Maradona would have been proud, I think. But look, sometimes this is what you have to accept. And I think back to Sir Alex Ferguson when I properly started getting involved in football, and they used to just be so pleased with winning the games that they didn't deserve to win, or they'd sort of scrape through by the skin of their teeth. And I'm not saying this now sets us up to be the champions of this division and get promoted on a canter, but what it does show is that when nobody's expecting you to do something and you then do it and prove everybody wrong, which I sort of felt proved wrong a little bit because I didn't think we would be capable of performing like that. And I thought it would be I think we even said in the last podcast, I had a feeling it would be a 0-0. I didn't expect there to be a barrage of goals like there was in the Hull game, but still being able to get that goal and then hold on for an hour, if not more, that's something we haven't seen from this team, especially this season. So, yeah, really pleased. As I say, the performance it sparks the debate that we spoke about the other day, and maybe we'll get viewers to partake in that as well. But whether you go for style or substance, and we've shown 2 different games in the last, 2 different styles in the last 2 games with very different results. Coming away from having lost a game, 5-goal thriller, really good football to watch, but you've lost and you've got nothing to show for it, or just being a little bit more gritty and defending your box and sort of holding on to everything you've got and getting the result. And it's then you have to sort of decide what's more important. If you had to watch a whole season of one style, what would you prefer? Would you prefer risking it all and losing as many as you're going to win potentially, or the same level of risk, or just being a little bit more boring like what we've been used to, just grinding and getting the 1-0s and the 0-0s away from home? So it's definitely something to think about. And, to throw a spanner in the works, I'm not quite sure where I sit, because I did feel really pleased with how we played against Hull, with that confusion and disappointment of the result. I was equally as pleased yesterday because it was, or Tuesday, sorry, at the time of recording, it was the result that was more important, and we needed it, and Davis needed it, and some of the players did. And yeah, I was just really pleased with it. As I say, it wasn't an amazing game to watch. It wasn't a spectacle, and it was very much backs to the wall, but I was just pleased to see us do something that we haven't shown yet.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to, the backroom staff. I think we've said since we've been back on the pod how woefully inept we are when it comes to defending and attacking dead balls. We looked a different unit, and I think there's probably two reasons for that. Number one, Neumann. It just gives the opposition a bigger or a different problem to think about. certainly when we're attacking. And then when we're defending, you're just not solely relying on Clara to do everything.
Yeah.
So he just shifts that responsibility a little bit, or halves it a little bit to sort of make an impact on, both ends of the park. And I think the second thing is I don't know, the quality was just a bit better now. Whether that's because they've been practicing it, you'd hope they have been, but you then go back. So if you're a pro footballer, you'd like to think if you're a dead ball person, if you're a Cochrane or Damari or Doyle or whoever, those ball players, that they can probably get it there or thereabouts. And we did look at different. We posed more problems than we have done for a long time. So I think we got that right. Isolated Samuel on the last pod, or one of the last pods, and for me, that was his best hour in a blue shirt, because I mean, Sky did show his heat map, and it did look like he was going forward a lot, but watching the game, it didn't feel like it was gung-ho. It didn't feel like it was just, right, I'm off. It felt like he kept his shape more. He defended really well. And the chalk and cheese for me is when he went off and Iwata came into right back, Iwata got done 2 or 3 times by the sub that came on.
Right away and got a yellow.
Yeah. And that for me was, Samuel did a really good job. So, this isn't, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I still question at times his quality going forward, but he's a right back. First and foremost, he needs to be a defender, and he definitely was that against Preston. And Cochrane, I think, was steady as well.
Mm-hmm.
The back line played really, really well.
Yeah.
And whilst Neumann will take all the plaudits for the goal and the sort of the clearance off the line, Clara was absolutely immense. And he's getting to be, if he wasn't already, one of those players where it's a shrug of the shoulders. You say, well, that's Clara, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is dangerous, because don't underestimate what he brings to that team, because it is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah.
And without wanting to be negative, just comparing the two centre halves, Clara was dominant in the air all the way through that game. Neumann can be a bit susceptible to goal kicks. He doesn't, whether he's not timing it right or he's not getting up enough. There were a few times where the flick on was pretty easy. And against a team like Preston, that's their bread and butter. If they haven't got that, they've got nothing. But all in all, I just felt that there was some, like you said, some players that needed a performance. I was a bit baffled, and we said it in the last pod, that Anderson 10 role that we saw from the whole game wouldn't exist, and he definitely didn't exist. They just battened down the hatches.
Yeah.
And to your point around what do you prefer, the 3-2 loss, but the style of play, or the 1-0 win? I think when you play away, certainly in this league, you're going to get a lot of those types of the requirements to get a result away from home. Is we're going to need to do what we did a lot of times against the likes of Preston. Might be a bit different against Bristol, but who knows? We'll see. But the fact that they've got it in their locker, and I don't look, when Steve Bruce got us promoted, I'm telling you now, that wasn't free flowing football. It definitely wasn't. It was effective football, and I think that's really that's the phrase that I think is the most appropriate. We've just got to be effective. I don't feel we need to be one or the other. The fact we've got both is great. We haven't had both for quite some time. So, certainly, I mean, I think you can probably discount last season to a degree just because of the quality in that league. Mm-hmm. But as you now get into the Championship, you need to be able to defend for your life. And because, just from recent history, I had zero faith with 10 minutes to go that we were going to keep a clean sheet. I was just waiting for it to happen. And that was massive, massive, massive for the manager, for the players. They deserved it. And there was, I mean, what you're saying about Doyle, some of the little touches in very, very tight, when they get impressed, he's in his own half, whether it's a little back heel or a little feint or a little dummy, just breaking the play up just by doing that one thing. Mm-hmm. And he's probably, he is the only player I think that we've got that. I think him and Leonard are similar, and we've discussed that. But just in those really tight spaces, that quality just shone.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased for him because I haven't really seen enough of him to make it. He's obviously a good footballer, but I just haven't seen enough to say, he's amazing or he isn't, because he just hasn't had enough of the ball.
Yeah.
But that was a big game for him, I feel. And the substitutions when they were made, what were your thoughts on those? Some were enforced, I guess, but others maybe not so much.
Yeah, well, I think I touched on Leonard a little bit at the start of this as well. Was when he came on. I think last season he was doing this, wasn't he? He was getting brought on for whichever one of Paik or Iwata was perhaps a little bit more fatigued, and he was just coming on for 10 minutes here or there, or playing when one of them was injured, and we weren't really seeing, I don't think, what Leonard is capable of, because he was just doing the crab roll last season, wasn't he? Where he had the free reign of the halfway line and he would just take it one way then the other. So we weren't really able to see what his standout sort of attributes were. But what I really liked about him when he came on, so for a lot of the game, because we were defending for 90% of the game yesterday, or Tuesday, that's how it felt anyway. When we were then going forward, we were kind of having to just lump it a little bit without really being able to sort of hold on to it, because you're lumping it up to three guys all shy of 6 foot. So against a team that are going to just repel that. So, but what I liked about Leonard was he was doing what you just said about Doyle as well. He was sort of willing to take the ball in crowded spaces just in and around our area and just turn or play it around the corner, or, and I've mentioned this about my frustrations with the midfield, is that quite often their first and most obvious option is to give it back to who gave it to them, or to play it to the fullback who's next to them. That happens quite a lot with Paik and Iwata, but with Leonard, he just has an extra second or half a second to just think and go, that's probably not going to be, especially when you're up against it, that's probably not going to be the best thing for me to do here. So why don't I turn it round the corner, try and find my winger, and then do a nice little 1-2, or, let him then, once I've passed it off, let him pass it through to whoever's up front at the time. So I just think when he came on, we started to grab a little bit more control in the middle, not more than them. They still had control throughout, but it just gave us a little bit more time with the ball to then not be having to constantly just face cross after cross after cross. So that massively helped, and it slowed the pace down when they were just starting to gather it. In terms of the other subs, so, I mean, look, it was a roller coaster for me in the 15-minute cameo of Cashin yesterday, because as soon as he came on, I texted you and said, oh, bloody hell, here we go. And that felt, after 5 minutes afterwards, I thought, I feel a bit bad, because actually, for the majority of his cameo, he made us look a lot more solid. Correct. And he was winning more headers than probably Neumann was. So when those three were sort of three out-and-out centre-halves, we seemed a lot more solid, and we were able to bat a lot away. And I actually, because I'm being taking this all very seriously, I started making some notes as I was watching it, and I genuinely got
why did I empty Cashin last
so I
week?
got halfway through a note that I was writing to say, Cashin's proved me wrong. He's come on and he's made us look really assured at the back. And then I got halfway through writing it, the ink wasn't even dry, and then he should have given a penalty away. And I thought, bloody hell.
But the thing is, Sam, and
I scribbled it straight out. No.
But this is, I think, there's really defining moments, whether it's in a game or in a season, and without wanting to be melodramatic, who knows whether this is a defining moment in our season. But you're right, that was a 50-50. In my view, whether it should have been a pen or not. It wasn't his fault. Damari Gray got caught in possession, and he tried to, he got it wide, he cut inside, he was looking for something, he delayed, he got tackled, and the ball just went through. Cashin square, he's not, and as much as you'd like to think that our defenders are ready for everything, you can't sort of prepare yourself for that scenario.
No.
And if that had been a penalty and they'd have scored, he'd have got absolutely emptied again.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I totally agree with you. I thought he was assured. I thought that he was comfortable there. His left peg, he's got cover around him. He's a no-nonsense defender.
Yeah.
I've said that, whether it be him or Kyogo or whoever, they don't go for that amount of money and be shit. It just doesn't happen. They might have a bad trot or be out of form a little bit, but fundamentally, they're going to be good footballers. I don't see him as a centre half because I just don't think he's physically big enough. But I can tell you what, if Cochrane gets injured, I wouldn't mind him at fullback. Not a
Yeah,
problem for me at all. So I think that's a find. That
yeah,
is definitely a find, and hopefully, I'm not going to sit here and say he's set the world on fire since he's been at Blues because he definitely hasn't. Having said that, there has definitely been something going on in the background with Neumann and whoever it is and everything else, and why he wasn't playing and why Cashin was getting in front of him. Was it square pegs, round holes? Did Cashin feel a bit pressured? I don't know, but there was a dynamic. You can just tell there was.
mm,
So now, hopefully, that's put to bed.
yeah,
Neumann and Clara, I didn't, and who knows? We were watching on telly. It didn't seem to be animosity. They were communicating well. When he scored, they were celebrating. After the game, they were celebrating. I didn't feel that was forced. I was surprised that Davies didn't react when Neumann scored, I have to say. I mean, he did nothing. Now, whether that because he was so much immersed in the game, like, great, or whether it's, shit, I'm going to have to pick him again next week.
yeah,
I don't know. But even then, after the game, Davies and him they had the hug and they were up for it. So that could be a turning point as far as if there was a morale problem because we weren't getting the results and there was an obvious conflict between the manager and player, then that's that's as positive as the result because that will re-galvanize the squad.
yeah.
So on that, I'm really, really pleased. And with regard to Leonard, I've got you absolutely right. I thought he just composed, and there was a 10-minute spell in the second half. We were knocking it around great, and let's not forget we've hit the post, and we had one cleared off the line. Stanno's made a half chance, nearly a goal. Damari probably could have done better with a chance. So it wasn't like we were effective on the break. And again,
Yeah.
against against Hull, I think I said on the last pod, the difference between the two sides were they were a lot quicker, a lot
Yeah,
more dynamic going forward. We were quicker and dynamic going forward
yeah,
because we weren't, their whole sort of purpose in the game, get it wide early, try and get that wide man into space and get the ball in. Whereas
yeah,
we had to be more creative. And again, even though we say it all the time, Stanno was superb. I know that it wasn't the goals and it wasn't, but he closed down the chance for Kumas. He ran his socks off, intelligent defending from the fronts. He's maturing. He's
oh
maturing.
yeah,
We have got a hell of a player there. I
yeah.
have no doubt.
You could
That
argue he's been forced into this a bit though, couldn't you? Because I don't envy a striker like him or a player like him who perhaps might not see himself as a striker, but for having to play a season in League One where everybody's just assuming that you're going to score 40 goals because you're the best player in the division, you're the best player in our team, and we're expected to walk the league. But there were so many games where he was surrounded by 5, 6 opposition players because they are camped in their box almost, not even their half. So for a player like him who thrives on, rebounds or, managing to break past the last line of defence, that sort of thing, he was starved of that last season. And I think that's really, like you say about maturing, I think that's really helped to mature him because he's had to then learn a different facet to being that furthest player up the pitch. He's having to then, he's not the biggest, he's not the quickest, but he will work his socks off. And I think he's figured out now that the way that we're playing and, the pressing game that we play, as long as he can just consistently do that, things will come of it. Chances will create themselves. And yeah, absolutely. We've got, whatever the price is, I think it's about 400 million now, isn't it, that he's apparently been bought for. That is worth every penny to us because just for his work rate alone and the fact that we get output from him as well in terms of goals and assists and being able to link things up, he's worth his weight in gold for us. And yeah, we're really lucky to have him as well as others. He's certainly not alone. But he is a standout for us because of what he actually contributes. So I couldn't agree more. On the flip side of that, I'm starting to become a little bit more concerned with the impact of Damari Gray now, though, because only because not when I say concerned, again, that's making it sound like I want him bombed out. That's not what I'm trying to say. But exactly what you said about the penalty shout, he didn't have to do that. There's a time and a place and a game in particular where that might be okay to do. But when you are up against it and you need the ball out of there pretty much as quickly as possible, trying to take on the three players that are around you, that's just not the right thing to do, especially when you're running towards your own goal. I just want to see a little bit more composure from him, because it's the sort of thing I would expect at the very least from him, of his experience and his qualities, just to be a little bit more calm and not feel like he's got to outskill his opponent all the time. You can just, if you have to get rid of it, get rid of it. That was the sort of game where getting rid of it wasn't a bad thing. Just keeping the ball in your own half and doing all of that. It just wasn't the game, especially out wide, because we've already said it a number of times. That was their game plan. Their game plan was to get the ball wide and to put it into the box. So you're kind of feeding them what they want by doing things like that. So, as I say, I'm not saying that I want him dropped or out the team or anything like that, but we haven't seen Anderson do anything like that really. So I just think, maybe leave Gray on the bench for the next game and see if he can come on and have an impact, because out of all of the subs, he didn't really have an impact for me.
Yeah.
You could have almost forgot that he came on, I think.
I think that it's not his type of game, right?
No, exactly.
He just isn't. Anderson's he's a lot more robust in possession. He keeps really good defensive shape. He's a 7 out of 10, and you need them in your team. Yeah. He's not the most talented player that we've got. Of course, he isn't. But I said it last time, I'll say it again. Just his work rate. And I know it's very stereotypical Blues. Everybody says it. If you demonstrate you're playing for the shirt, that's half the battle.
Yeah.
You need to have more than that. But he is that player for me. And look, managers they always have favourites, and he is definitely one of Davis's favourites, because Davis is. It's not when you employ people. You employ people with your own traits, I think. Yeah. And if you look at Davis as hard-working, no nonsense, and Anderson is exactly the same as that. So I can see why that worked. One player that I think on your Damari Gray point, I'm getting really worried about the keeper.
Oh, okay.
Because it feels like it's a disaster waiting to happen. He arguably should have been sent off in the previous game. He's had another Etheridge run of Russia blood, which nearly and should have probably ended up in an equaliser. Do I want him out? No, because we've now gone to, since he's been in the team. I don't think he's down to him, but just the results are better. So you have to give that as a collective, in my view. Now that Newman's in, I just hope he stays in. We just look a lot more solid. And I think if an Allsop was behind those two, I don't think Allsop would be under as much pressure. I think his decision-making is probably better than Beadle's in many instances. Yeah. And that is down to experience.
Yeah.
Because when Allsop goes, he goes. Whereas when Beadle goes, he has to think about it, then he goes.
That's been the problem.
And that's the difference between clearing the ball or clearing the man.
Yeah.
Look, you never want to be in a position where, and it got to the point a little bit with Peacock Farrell at the start of last season, you're just waiting for him to shut one in the net.
Yeah.
And in this league, we can't have that. You can't be waiting for somebody knowing they're going to make a mistake. Now, that might be a bit harsh. And like I said, I wouldn't drop him. But if we get away with another one of those AWOL moments against Bristol City and we get a result, somebody's going to have a word with him.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get away with that. He's had two. I would predict if he has a third, something's going to happen that is not positive. So on that one, and that's the only player where I go, I would be wanting to keep an eye on it. And my final point, I think, before we go, and I'll let you come in on it. The referee. Now, that was a tough game to referee, because that was, brutal, very competitive. Nobody gave an inch, which was great. Blue stood up, and that's what I said the other day. Very easy to get bullied out of a game. And if we weren't up for it, we would have got bullied out that game. And they will win a lot of games at home playing the way they played against us.
Yeah.
That's a lot for 90 minutes, right? That is
Yeah.
100% concentration, desperate to get something out of the game. So if you're playing against a Sheffield Wednesday, Blackburn, sides that are just probably feeling a bit sorry for themselves, that is not the place to go, because they'll have you they'll eat you alive. And with the ref, he did keep he kept his cards away for quite a while. I didn't think that he any rash decisions. Having said that, for a change, and it's overdue, I think we probably got the cut of the that we got the better of it.
Yeah.
You saw, like everything, the Preston supporters would be like, he's the worst referee we've ever seen. Well, have a look at the referee that we had against Tom, and who missed a blatant penalty, who gave the wrong player a yellow card. If he'd given to the right player, he'd have been sent off. There's been so many times where we get absolutely shafted. I'm quite happy to take it and say, look, we got the better of it, and it's about time.
Yeah.
So and the utter shithousery from Leonard. He is. It was a masterclass. The sort of the on the deck pretend he got smashed in the face when he absolutely didn't. The time wasting, and again, how much of that have we had to suck up?
Yeah.
It does my head in.
Yeah,
and maybe it's me being petty, and again, says a lot about me and my character. I'm just like, I'm here for all of this. You take as much time as you want, lads.
Yeah,
but anything with the ref that you thought?
No,
do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing my view on refs quite often is the biggest compliment that you can pay a ref is that you no longer know who they are, in terms of they've not made any decisions that's made you go, right, how many games has this guy refed? Who did he ref last time? How many cards does he give out? Does he give penalties? Like we had that referee against Hull, and everybody knows his name now because he was an absolute joke. This guy, I couldn't even tell you who it was, because there was nothing that happened throughout the game for me that made me think, oh, bloody hell, this ref's in for a torrid time. Maybe that's a bias thing because of the fact things like the penalty and or the potential penalty and things like that. But that for me, like I said, that's the biggest compliment I can give to a ref, is if I've not just me, but if I haven't gone through the trouble to figure out who they are, where they've come from, how many games, how experienced are they, where do they normally ref, what level have they got to. For me, it was just one of those games where that was the very least of any concerns or thoughts that I had. Just there wasn't anything from my point of view of any real note, which again is a good thing, because really that's what they should be. That's how a ref should be reviewed, is somebody that's just there to keep everything going as it should be. Make the decisions when they need making, and if they don't need making, then don't make them. Yeah, the penalty is probably the only one.
But it wasn't a Stonewall. It wasn't Stonewall.
And I've seen videos going around which I think are quite entertaining, of the Preston fans probably feeling how we felt last week and doing highlight reels of all the things that went against them. But look, if you watch every game of football and nitpick every single challenge, every single 50-50, you're going to be able to make those videos even when nothing's actually done wrong. You're going to be able to find those things, of course you are, because not every 50-50 gets given the right way. Not every decision gets picked up correctly. The handball from Neumann, that from where the ref has to stand, and maybe the linesman could have helped him a little bit perhaps, but you can see why he's not going to know that's hit his elbow, because there's a crowd of players, there's a wall of players between him and the goal. So, it's one of those things. But as I say, possibly that's because it's a bias. Maybe if the shoes were on the other foot, we'd be saying everything we need to know about this referee and we'd be slating him. It's hard to say, but yeah, nothing overly concerning. Like you said, every now and again you are going to get them go for you and you're going to get them go against you. You just have to sort of ride with the waves, don't you? But I think the whole game and the referee that day, that was an exception, because that was just so bad. And so many poor decisions, and more so than anything else, the just complete lack of control that he had. That was what changed it for me. So generally you get bad decisions and you might not spend more than a day thinking about it. So yeah, this guy, absolutely fine, no problems, and we can have him again quite happily.
Yeah, definitely. And if there was ever a game that players know when there's a weak ref.
Yeah.
And that was a game that could have got out of hand just because of how physical it was. So, I mean, we predicted either a 0-0 or potentially might shade a 1-0, so we got that right. it's massive as again, 3 points, and we bang on halfway or just under now, and then we go off to Bristol City. We will do a pod on that probably that will go out hopefully on Friday, all being well, just as a bit of a preview of it if we can. If we don't get the chance to do that, then we obviously will wrap that up and we'll do a bit of a longer one after the game. So, Sam, thank you for taking the time out of your day. You can now go back to the office.
It's really good timing as well, because I've just had a notification on my phone saying 10% battery remaining. So this is good timing.
Brilliant. Okay, but no, thank you for that, mate. As ever, really appreciate it.
No worries.
Right, we'll wrap that up then, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. That was a fabulous result and a proper Blues away performance that I certainly haven't seen for a very long time. That's up there with one of my most enjoyable performances, certainly defensively, for many, many years. So long may that continue and we get another 3 points against Bristol. But between now and then, keep right on.